Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, this is TR calling, or you're listening, hopefully, to a podcast that I'm doing called Masculinity, Blessing or Curse. I'm excited about it because it allows me to be able to ask the questions and speak to the issues and I like to talk about it as the generational divide. We are, I've said before, a part of the Moses generation. I'm a baby boomer, 70 years old last week. And we have a responsibility, I believe, to speak to the Joshua generations and those beyond it. Today, I want to share with you just some events that occurred. I was at a meeting earlier this morning, the meeting of some men, and it was kind of a podcast forum in that respect. Some couple of questions. I had three different generations represented. The different generations are the ones that were represented, excuse me, would be the baby boomer, had a Gen X, and a Gen Y, which is millennial. And asked a couple of questions. And here is something that I think is significant. Our ability to be able to speak to a different generation with the millennial and no, not the millennial, with the baby boomer and the millennial. Yes, those two generations had the relationships with their fathers, and we spoke. That was the first question about that we spoke to. The relationship with their fathers was very well. Discipline is kind of the forefront of that relationship. Baby boomers and millennials, they come forward with this whole idea of do what I said or you're going to be punished. And there were severe punishments. And that was corporal punishment at its highest. And everybody believed that that was the way that it would be done. One gentleman talked about being raised by his grandfather because the question was the how what was the relationship with your father and or the male that had the greatest influence over you. The first gentleman spoke and had a relationship with his grandfather, maybe even great grandfather, because the father had either passed away or abandoned them. But in either case, it was a very strong relationship there. But it was pretty much he and four other brothers lived on a farm. Granddad got up early in the morning and he said, "These are your chores. Get busy. And I'll be back at XYZ time, and they'd better be done when I get back." And if they were not done, there was severe punishment, and you knew that that's what it was. And it was really a very discipline-driven relationship. In his case, as well as the baby boomer, never said anything about "I love you." Those emotions were kind of cut out, and I can concede that that was not something that I had in my life either. And when you talk to guys who are of Generation X or Millennial, or Generation, I'm sorry, I'm messing up, Baby Boomer or Gen X. Gen X would be 1965 to 1980. 1965 to 1980 is Gen X. Millennial is 1981 to 1996. So we had a baby boomer, a Gen X, and a millennial. With the Gen X and the baby boomer, discipline was the primary function of father in that home, or the male, because in some instances there were there was not the father. When we got to the gentleman who is the millennial, this was one, he said his biological father had seven children total, and he had just met the other six siblings this past year. So a very disjointed, broken relationship between his biological father. But he mentioned five other men that contributed to his male image. He was a gentleman that at first, during his younger years, rebelled against all of those, but has now come to Christ as a vital part of our church now, and spoke very highly of those lessons learned, even though he may not have applied to himself to them during that time. When asked the question relative to how did that relationship inspire your being a father and raising your child, the Gen X and the baby boomer kind of replicated what was there. It's very discipline driven attitude toward their children. The millennial talked about an exchange of conversation. We've talked in the past about the absence of millennials and Gen Zs in church. And I think, men, if we attempt to replicate the lessons that we got, valuable as they were, the way we got them, I think we err because it's a different generation. It would be synonymous to Blockbuster deciding, look, we run this and we're going to do it this way. And Netflix comes along and eats your lunch. So I think there's one Blockbuster in the world today. For us baby boomers, we are very familiar with Blockbusters. We were there every weekend. But now Netflix runs it and is about to buy conglomerates of other companies. We're missing them if we don't learn the exchange. Now, the criticism that we often give us baby boomers, that this generation wants to be their children's friend, and there's some conversation versus do this or else. And what I said before is, in addition to us needing to have the exchange from Moses to Joshua, on that same mountain, we have to listen to Joshua so that we can be able to hear what Joshua is saying. Because there perhaps were some things he wanted to say during his growing period that he was too intimidated to say. So now we have to be in a position to hear them. They have an opinion. Now we live in an environment where, because of social media, because of their educational value versus what many of us came up with, a high school diploma was a big deal many, many years ago, decades ago. Now a college degree is not as valuable. It means college debt. So now we're living in a social and technological environment that demands that there are so many other opinions out there that we have to listen in order to be able to hear what their hurts are, what their needs are. Jesus was never judgmental. He always came with, where does it hurt? One person is blind, another person has leprosy, another person, whatever your need is, without judging them. The woman who was brought with the issue of blood, caught in the very act of adultery, he did not judge her. There were people around with rocks in their hands, if you know this story, that were judging her. And they said, the law says we caught her in the act of adultery, she should be stoned. What say ye? Well, Jesus did not judge her. Jesus simply asked, let he that is without sin cast the first stone. And after they had dismissed themselves because all of them had sinned, in fact, where was the man? If she was caught in the act of adultery, where was the male? Another question, another conversation for another time. But they walked away. And he said, he asked her, where are your accusers? And she looked around, none were there. He says, neither do I accuse you, but go and sin no more. Now, there is something that you need to do, but I don't judge you now. There are some changes that you need to make. But he heard her, he listened to her, and that is perhaps an improvement opportunity for those of us who are baby boomers who were given or maybe even force fed the discipline that we have. And these disciplines have to be given, but if we are to communicate them at a level that this current environment demands, we have to be able to do it in a way that it is palatable to them, that they receive it. And I don't mean to soft pedal this, because discipline is discipline. You have to have discipline in life. You have to get up. You have to make, when your body oftentimes tells you, I can't get up. No, we have to go. We have things we have to do. But we have to feed it in such a way that we say to them, we care. Uh, in the New Testament, we talked about there's a new term that came out that related to God himself. Yahweh, El Shaddai, Jehovah, Old Testament. In the New Testament, we get another word, Abba. Abba. It is a more intimate daddy word, the Aramaic Abba. And that Abba is a relationship that we need to learn so that we pass that on to our sons and daughters. God bless you. Please subscribe if you would, share with someone, give me your opinions. I'd love to have it. God bless you. God be with you. Take care.